There are crimes that shock you, and then there are crimes that break something inside you. This story does both. It starts with a mother's worry, a small, uneasy feeling that something just isn't right. And it ends with a truth no one was prepared to face. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. As always, we talk about stories that dig into the darkest corners of human behavior. Stories that make you feel something long after the video ends. And stories that show how even the people closest to us can hide the most terrifying secrets. And today, we're back with another heartbreaking true crime story. A story that begins with silence, unravels with suspicion, and leaves behind a chilling question. How well do we really know the people we love? This is the story of Rachel Entwistle. A mother who was murdered in the one place she should have been safest was her own home, with her newborn daughter in her arms. But what could cause the murder of Rachel Entwistle? How could her own husband, the man who vowed to love and protect her, do something so unthinkable? What kind of darkness could push a man to destroy the very family he helped create? We're going to uncover the chilling case of Neil Entwistle, piece by piece, layer by layer, until the truth becomes impossible to ignore. And trust me, the deeper we go, the darker it gets. So sit tight, settle in, and prepare yourself for a story that will stay with you long after this video ends. And don't forget to subscribe and like the video, because it helps the channel grow and brings you more true crime stories just like this one. Rachel Entwistle felt like someone you'd meet on an ordinary afternoon, maybe at a playground, maybe in line at a coffee shop, the kind of woman who smiled easily and made people feel safe around her. She was warm, dependable, and carried a quiet strength shaped by a childhood marked with loss. Rachel was born on December 4, 1973, and her life took its first painful turn early on when she lost her father. That kind of grief stayed with her, softening her edges but also giving her a kind of resilience that defined the woman she became. By the time she went to study abroad at the University of York, Rachel had grown into someone who understood responsibility, empathy, and what it meant to care deeply for others. And it was there, in a world far from home, that she met the man who would completely change the course of her life, Neil Entwistle. Neil's upbringing couldn't have been more different. He came from a working-class family, raised alongside his brother in a home where laughter, roughhousing, and childhood adventures were the norm. The boys lived with their father and grew up inseparable, the kind of siblings who shared everything from games to dreams. For Neil, one dream stood out. He wanted a life bigger than the one he knew. He was studying electronic engineering at the University of York, working toward his master's degree. Smart, ambitious, and polite. On paper, he seemed like the kind of man who had everything in order, but everything changed when he met Rachel. She wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her calm, grounded nature was exactly what drew him in. Their connection clicked fast. University life, late-night conversations, shared activities, and yes, even rowing together. It felt, to both of them, like something real. After graduating, the two took their first step into adulthood together. They moved about 10 miles away, close enough to stay connected to the lives they knew, but far enough to begin building something of their own. Neil found work in the tech and computing field, while Rachel built a career as a language teacher. Two steady jobs, two young people in love. It looked like the start of a promising future. Their relationship grew serious quickly, and soon they were walking down the aisle. Not once, but twice. They held two weddings to honor both sides of their families, celebrating their love in the United Kingdom and again in the United States. It was a union blessed by everyone who knew them. In 2005, Rachel gave birth to their daughter, Lillian. She was only 9 months old, but she left an impression on everyone who met her. For a while, it looked like everything was perfect. A young family, a new baby, and a fresh start in a quiet Massachusetts town. But behind those walls, behind the smiles, behind the picture-perfect image, something darker had already begun. Even in families that look perfect from the outside, cracks can form quietly, almost imperceptibly. For Neil and Rachel, those cracks began small. Little tensions, hidden truths, and unspoken fears. But over time, they grew, and no one could ignore them. Rachel settled into her new life in Massachusetts with surprising ease. She made friends at her workplace as a language teacher, forming close bonds with her colleagues and even some students outside of work. She loved being near her mother and stepfather, and the idea of them playing a role in little Lillian's life excited her. Every visit, every smile from her baby, seemed to affirm that they were doing the right thing. Neil's experience was very different. Beneath his polite, educated exterior, he was wrestling with insecurity. His working-class roots, thick Yorkshire accent, and sense of being an outsider weighed heavily on him. The move to Massachusetts, while outwardly exciting, only intensified these feelings. Neil had always dreamed of wealth, status, and a life beyond ordinary. Now, faced with bills, responsibility, and a future he couldn't control, that dream started to feel impossible. Soon after moving, the couple briefly lived with Rachel's mother and stepfather. Rachel loved being close to her family, but she and Neil were eager to find a place of their own. One day, Neil suggested they go shooting with Rachel's stepdad and his own brother, a hobby from his childhood. At the family gathering, Neil followed their movements carefully, carrying a small revolver. He was inexperienced, and when the gun went off, one of the bullets struck Rachel's stepdad lightly. Fortunately, he wasn't seriously hurt, but the incident revealed something deeper. Neil's recklessness, his growing frustration, and his inability to cope with the pressures of his new life. While Rachel focused on building friendships and her career, Neil's insecurities deepened. Money was tight. Neil didn't have enough to buy a house outright, so he secretly met the owner of a small home they liked and arranged a 3-month lease, claiming his offshore account would cover the purchase shortly. He never mentioned to Rachel or anyone else that he had left his job and was essentially living off borrowed time. Financial troubles only grew. Rachel discovered Neil's credit card had been blocked. When she confronted him, he walked out, leaving her confused and worried. Behind closed doors, Neil's debts had piled up to around $40,000. Desperate, Neil created a website called millionmaker.co.uk, promising participants that they could earn money after investing small amounts. In reality, it was a scam. People sent money, and Neil kept it. While Neil focused on scamming others, Rachel poured her energy into their future, decorating, planning, and dreaming about their new home and life together. On the surface, it seemed like a normal, happy family. A devoted mother, a cheerful baby, and a young couple starting fresh. But beneath the smiles and daily routines, Neil's insecurities, obsession with wealth, and mounting debts were colliding with reality, and with Rachel's steady, honest approach to life. To understand what happened in that house, you need to know this first. Neil hadn't suddenly snapped. His mind had been drifting into a dark place for weeks. Late at night, when Rachel and baby Lillian were asleep, he was online searching things no husband should ever search. Quick suicide methods, how to stab correctly. He even joined forums asking strangers about painless ways to die. January 20th, 2006 began like any ordinary winter morning in Hopkinton. Cold air, calm streets, nothing unusual on the surface. Inside the Entwistle home, Rachel was doing what she did best, caring for her daughter with that gentle, steady warmth everyone knew her for. Lillian was her cheerful, wiggly self, kicking her tiny legs, babbling, happy in her mother's arms. They had no idea how close the storm really was. Neil, meanwhile, had already made his decision. He told Rachel he was heading to the mall to pick up some computer equipment for work. Instead, he drove straight to his in-laws' home, using the extra key he always carried. He let himself inside the quiet house, walked to the storage box where Joe, Rachel's stepfather, kept his firearms, and took the .22 caliber revolver. Moments later, Neil returned home, carrying the weapon that would end everything. Although investigators were never able to confirm the exact positions of Rachel and Lillian at the time, the evidence pointed toward the primary bedroom, a place that should have been their sanctuary. A place where Rachel nursed her baby, read books, folded tiny clothes, the heart of their home. And then, in one moment that still feels unreal even today, Neil raised the gun and pulled the trigger. Rachel didn't have time to scream or understand what was happening. A single shot to the head ended her life instantly. The life of a woman who trusted him, loved him, and never saw danger in her own home. Little Lillian, just 9 months old and completely defenseless, was next. The second bullet struck her tiny abdomen. 2 lives taken in the same room, within the same breath. No warning, no struggle. Just a sudden, suffocating quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't belong in a family home. The kind that tells you something has gone horribly, irreversibly wrong. That evening, one of Rachel's closest friends stopped by, excited to see her. She knocked, waited, knocked again. But the house stayed completely silent. No footsteps, no baby sounds, nothing. She left, thinking maybe Rachel had stepped out, but something didn't feel right. Rachel's mom called. Friends called. No one answered. By the second day, panic had replaced concern. Family members kept trying to reach them. Calls, texts, emails. But every attempt ended the same way. No response. Neil didn't panic. He didn't cry out. He didn't pick up the phone to call for help. Because he had already decided what he was going to do. Long before that morning, long before the first shot was fired, Neil had been quietly plotting his escape. Late at night, when the house was still and everyone else was asleep, he scoured flight websites. He checked routes, compared one-way tickets to London. He even studied the fastest, most discreet ways to leave the country without anyone noticing. By the next day, the quiet that had settled over the Entwistle house had turned into a knot of worry for everyone who loved Rachel. Her friend had stopped by the day before, expecting laughter, chatter, and a warm welcome. But the house was silent. She called Rachel's phone, and it rang, unanswered. Repeatedly, the unease grew. When her sister joined her, the calls still went unanswered. Anxiety turned to fear, and they contacted the Hopkinton Police Department to report Rachel missing. A couple of patrol officers were sent to check the house. When they arrived, all doors and windows were locked. One of the officers used her keycard to gain entry. Inside, the television was still on, and Rachel's dog, Sally, wandered the rooms, alive and confused. At first, the officers even considered the possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning. But seeing Sally healthy put that thought to rest. The officers moved through the house, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Upstairs, they heard classical music coming from a room they assumed was Rachel's. The bathtub was full of water, as if someone were preparing for a bath. They searched everywhere, but found nothing, no sign of Rachel or Lillian. With no answers, the officers left, leaving a sense of unease hanging in the air. The following day, officers returned for a more thorough search. The moment they stepped inside, a foul odor hit them. It was faint at first, then stronger as they approached the bedroom. Hearts pounding, they lifted the bedsheets, and there they were. Rachel, Lillian. After the horror in Hopkinton, the search for Neil stretched across nations. United States and British authorities worked together, tracing his flights, his passport, and every possible lead. It wasn't a dramatic, siren-filled manhunt. Instead, it ended quietly, almost disturbingly calm. After searching the Entwistle house and finding nothing, police noticed something else. The family car was missing. A quick plate check revealed it had been left at Logan Airport, with the key still in the ignition. Everything pointed to a carefully planned escape. On the 8th of February, 2006, less than 3 weeks after the murders of Rachel and Lillian, Entwistle was arrested on the London Underground at Royal Oak Station. He was simply walking off a train. No chase, no chaos. Just a man stepping straight into the custody of Scotland Yard's extradition unit. During interviews, Neil tried to twist the story. He claimed he had called his father to tell him that he found Rachel and Lillian already dead. A desperate lie meant to paint himself as a grieving husband and father. But authorities saw through it immediately. When police searched his belongings, they uncovered disturbing evidence of the life behind his polite exterior. A torn-out page from a tabloid filled with escort ads and phone numbers, alongside a handwritten note suggesting he was trying to contact a former girlfriend. A few days later, at a hearing in London's Bow Street Magistrates Court, Entwistle agreed to waive his right to contest extradition. He would be sent back to the United States for trial. In that courtroom, the magnitude of what had happened finally hit. A man once seen as a husband, a father, a gentle neighbor, was now the central figure in a crime that shocked 2 nations. The run was over. The real reckoning had begun. Once Neil was in custody, the focus shifted from the manhunt to uncovering the full story of how a seemingly ordinary husband and father could commit such an unimaginable crime? Investigators began to piece together the evidence, layer by layer. The first clues came from the house itself. Forensic teams meticulously examined the Entwistle home, noting the small but telling details: the blood patterns, the placement of objects, even the dog's behavior. Every element painted a chilling picture of the final moments Rachel and Lillian spent in that house. Digital evidence told another story. Neil's computer history revealed searches that were impossible to ignore: methods of suicide, ways to stab like a professional, and financial manipulations. Emails and online accounts exposed a side of Neil no one had seen: a man desperate, deceitful, and planning escape even as he lived under the same roof as his family. Witness accounts added context. Friends and family described Neil's growing secrecy, the inconsistencies in his stories, and the sudden distance he created between himself and Rachel. His lies, like claiming he found Rachel and Lillian dead or that he had called his father in shock, crumbled under scrutiny. When Neil Entwistle walked into the Massachusetts courtroom, he carried the same unsettling calm he had shown since the moment he vanished to London. No visible fear, no anger, no grief. Just a blank, distant stare that made the entire room uneasy. But the prosecutors didn't need emotion from him. They had something far stronger. From the very first witness, Neil's story began to crack. He had told everyone he found Rachel and Lillian already dead. He claimed he panicked. He claimed he ran because he was overwhelmed, not guilty. But none of it lined up with reality. The prosecution began laying out the evidence like puzzle pieces snapping into place. His internet searches in the days before the murders, escorts, adult sites, secret fantasies, and ways to escape responsibility. His collapsing finances, and the lies he had been living behind. Gunshot residue found on him. The revolver taken from Rachel's parents' home, only Neil had access to it. His fingerprints, his movements, his timeline, and finally, the one-way flight to London that he had planned long before the murders. Every detail pointed in one direction. Every fact contradicted his story. Every moment made his panic explanation look more like strategy. The defense tried to soften him, painting Neil as confused, frightened, psychologically overwhelmed. But the physical evidence was stronger than any sympathy they tried to build. When the jury delivered their verdict, the courtroom fell into a heavy, absolute silence. Guilty, on all counts, no hesitation. No doubt. No alternate version left standing. The judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms.
After being found guilty of murder in the first degree, it is ordered by the court to be sentenced to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar.
1 for Rachel, 1 for baby Lillian. 2 lives lost. 2 sentences to match the magnitude of what he had taken. And as Neil was led away, still wearing that same blank expression, one truth became impossible to ignore. He had finally reached the one place he could not run from.